dozens arrested in South Africa after looting and protests in Johannesburg and Pretoria. Although foreign-owned shops are targeted, authorities say that the unrest is more about criminality than xenophobia. We hear from a correspondent in the country.
Police in South Africa try again to stop rioting and looting in some poor neighborhoods in and around Johannesburg. It's been like this since Sunday. Some of the businesses and shops vandalized belong to foreign nationals. This is not the first time Mohammed Afzal Hussein has been through this. He says his other store in another part of the city was looted last year.
If it's every year something like this, how can I can make something for my families, for my children, for my parents is there, because we have come from so far for the work, not for a crime or whatever, only for work.
Some South Africans believe criminal gangs are responsible for the violence. Mario Abrunosa says he got a phone call early in the morning that his business was being looted, but it was too dangerous for him to move. Now that it's relatively quiet, he's come back to assess the damage.
I still found people still looting as I arrived here with the police presence. And all I wanted to say is it's not about foreign in the shop. I'm a South African citizen. I employ South African people that work for me in the shop. And they targeted, it's just a pure criminality attack that they've done here to me. And I'm running at a loss. I'm without words. I don't know what else to say.
Some say the country's high unemployment rate, now nearly at 30%, widespread poverty and inequality are to blame for the violence. In 2008, at least 60 people were killed and more than 50,000 forced from their homes when many foreign African nationals were targeted. 4 years ago, at least 7 people were killed. Some South Africans feel they are competing with outsiders for scarce jobs. Human rights groups say anti-immigrant comments made by some politicians are making things worse.
There's a xenophobic sentiment underlying this about foreigners having to leave. We are a democracy. We are a democratic society. We can't allow people to take the law into their own hands. There is no country that doesn't have foreign nationals.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has condemned the attacks as xenophobic and unacceptable. More than 100 people have been arrested for public violence, arson and looting. But in some areas, the police seem overwhelmed, making it easy for some people to stay in the street.
Jane, you're in Cape Town, where the World Economic Forum starting in Africa today. There's lots of high-level delegates there, and this racist violence is quite embarrassing for South Africa.
Totally embarrassing. I mean, international investment is what this country needs at the moment, more than anything, to kickstart a very moribund economy. And the World Economic Forum is taking place in Cape Town, South Africa's most beautiful city, the jewel in the crown. And yet set against this beautiful backdrop is these incredible days of lawlessness that everyone is talking about. The violence that we've seen prompted a sharp rebuke from the government of Nigeria, who said enough is enough. Their people in South Africa are the targets, the primary targets of this lawlessness. The authorities in Ethiopia and Zimbabwe and Zambia have also warned their people to be on their guard. And Zambia has even cancelled a friendly soccer match against South Africa on Saturday in protest at what it sees is targeting of foreign nationals. So very, very embarrassing start to the World Economic Forum. And Cyril Ramaphosa really has been criticised for what is seen as weak leadership over this. We've had days and days of lawlessness, of anarchy. And it was only yesterday afternoon, Tuesday, that he came out and condemned what was going on. So I think there really is a lack of leadership, which has only really served to fuel the sense of unrest and chaos and mayhem that's sort of engulfed, the biggest cities in our country.
Jane, what's the situation like at the moment in regard to the violence, and what prompted this spate of xenophobic attacks?
Well, there always seems to be a proxy reason given. So, for example, last week we had xenophobic attacks in Pretoria, and the taxi drivers, the people who run the very lucrative minibus taxi routes, they said they were taking matters into their own hands because of Nigerian drug dealers, because they said the police were taking bribes, were doing nothing, and they started that. In Johannesburg, there was some sort of reason given about a building occupation by illegal immigrants. So there really is always a very sort of superficial reason given, but it is really a boiling up of a huge amount of anger that we see festering in our poorest areas in South Africa, deep frustration about deepening inequality, rising levels of poverty and joblessness, people whose lives really haven't improved, and in fact, in many cases, have got worse over recent years, and a growing frustration that the police are strained, that criminals aren't being caught, that just sense of general lawlessness, and so it just spills over. And the foreigners are easy targets. There's 5 million of them in South Africa, and it's very easy to blame them for a shortage of housing and a shortage of jobs, because those foreigners who do come to South Africa do seem to make quite a good fist of things. They are entrepreneurial, they set up businesses, and this causes deep sense of resentment and jealousy by South Africans, and they become very, very easy targets. But of course, these sort of scenes where unruly rioting and looting just takes place over a period of days. 5 people are dead now, nearly 200 people arrested, really exposes how weak our crime-fighting institutions are in South Africa, and it just sort of adds fuel to the fire. And we have these sort of protests and civil unrest pop up constantly in South Africa in different parts of the country. The last few days have been the most notable. But really, it is a constant pattern of behaviour, and it just exposes, festering tensions that do rise and continue to rise.
As a 19-year-old student, I am Uyinen. And I'm angry, I'm tired. We're tired of being told to work in groups. We're tired of being told to carry pepper spray. We're tired of being told how to survive. We want to live.
The students are also very shocked and saddened, and as you say, also traumatized, I think, by these events. I think they are especially traumatized by knowing that this is not an isolated incident, and that the levels of gender-based violence in this country are unacceptably high. So what we also wanted to express today here by meeting and honoring Nene and remembering her is also to register our anger at the fact that our women and our students, in particular on this campus, do not feel safe.
I think we are all touched by this in one way or another. We all feel the trauma, we all feel the pain, and we all feel the anger.
When this hit us yesterday, it was just, yeah, it happened. But then when I got home last night, that's when it really hit me, okay, this actually happened, and you have to be cautious of where you go, and you just anymore, you just really can't trust people, seriously, you really can't.
It would be good to see crimes called out for what they actually are. This post office is not closed for unforeseen circumstances. It's closed because they hired a person who had a criminal record who came in and brutally assaulted and murdered a woman on the premises. That's why it's closed.
I was here on the 8th of August. I was served by this gentleman who committed this brutal murder. Now I'm so shocked about this horrific thing that he has done, to a young life, and we're worried about our girls.
We stand here to denounce all forms of violence and hatred in our country, violence against women and children especially. We just pray God's blessing upon our country, South Africa, and especially the city of Cape Town.
Let's hope that this death of Nene will bring an end to all these violent acts, especially directed to women, young women and children.
Because we're moms, we're mothers,
and
I can't imagine what it must be like to, first of all, just to lose your child, but then also to lose them like this. I don't know.
Yeah, she never gets to see her mom again. Her mom never gets to see her baby.